I was born in a very poor region of Romania on October 1st, 1931, in my grandparents' house on my father's side. My parents did not yet have a house of their own. I came into the world in a critical historical period, the period crossed by the world economic crisis in which the whole of humanity entered. This phenomenon, but also the ignorance and monstrosity of some people, led to the arming of some nations, and then to the beginning of the greatest drama of humanity, the Second World War. A war that left behind over 70 million dead and great destruction of economic objectives and material goods. The social, political, and economic situation marked my childhood, which was also so full of problems and shortcomings of all kinds. Living conditions were very difficult, and I felt them in the first years. My parents worked hard to survive and raise their children. In the first years of my life, I grew up in extreme and terrible poverty, without enough food, without clothes and shoes. I was learning well in school, but I didn't have time to play, because being the eldest of 4 brothers in the family, I had to constantly help my parents. I did field work, I had to take care of the animals. I walked hundreds of meters to the nearest fountain to bring water. During my childhood, I did not benefit from any toy. I rarely get to improvise something with other children. We made a kind of imperfect ball out of skins and fabrics that we rarely played with. Outside our bubble, in the world, the war had started, but my country was neutral. The situation was difficult, but as others in our situation, we got used to it. We didn't know the times would get even harder. 1941. The only joy of that year was the successful graduation of the 3rd grade and having more free time in the summer. The Great Trouble cannot be forgotten. It began on June 22nd, 1941, when Romania entered the war with Germany against the Soviet Union. That day I was with the cattle to graze on a hill near my village. It was afternoon, a hot day, and the grass smelled nice. Suddenly, from a distance, the church bells in my village started ringing loudly around 4 p.m. I didn't understand what was happening then. As I entered the village, the people began to talk. The old woman began to cry and mourn. The atmosphere changed drastically, and I was confused. Then, I found out that Romania had entered the war and that a general mobilization had been declared, starting within the next day. People were very sad because they knew that most young men over 18 would be called to war. My parents didn't know how to explain to me the situation. Why do people have to go to war and die? I asked. All they told me was, that's what the government's decided. Later, when I grew up, I found out about the political situation on this side of Europe, and that most of the states that existed between the 2 powers, Germany and the Soviet Union, suffered greatly. The 2 great aggressors, separate or together, had attacked Finland, wiped out Poland and the Baltic countries from the map, divided Czechoslovakia, and destroyed Yugoslavia. Romania could not escape untouched, and under the threat of invasion, they lost territories to both sides. Being cornered, a new government accepted entry into the war to reclaim at least the eastern territories. That was the reason. Soldiers began to come to the village and incorporate the young people. There was a macabre atmosphere. Sad, full of worries and tears. I saw a widowed woman from the First World War who had to send their children to war without knowing if they would ever see them again. 1942. The life of the people in my country and my family had become even more difficult. Everything that was produced in a country that was already so torn and economically weak was destined for the war effort. Martial law was applied, and for all those who did not submit to the war effort were quickly judged. Peasants, including my family, needed and were forced to give oxen, horses, cows, and other goods. There were nights when I didn't have enough food. I couldn't wait to fall asleep, to not feel the hunger. We had no electricity then, and there was not even any lamp gas anymore. In the evening, we lit the house with a lamp based on lard and fat. This year, my father was also called to war, in an artillery regiment. I remember that the echelon passed through our village, where it stayed one night and one day with all the war equipment. The transport to the front was done with horses and carts in most cases, and it was rare to use the railway because the bombings had intensified on them. So, we separated from my father, who was moving to the front. We were the only ones left. Me, my mother, my younger brothers, and my younger sister. I had to work continuously in the field and to take care of the animals to help my family. My father was forced to fight on the Eastern Front until 1944, being responsible for logistics, transporting ammunition, and food to the soldiers. I still had to go to school, and I graduated the 5th grade in 1943. Continued to study and work. The days were long and stressful. I was constantly thinking about my father, whom I hadn't seen in over a year, and I was especially wondering if he would come back. Because I liked to learn in school, my teacher wanted for me to continue my studies. In the summer, my teacher came to our house to try and get my mother to agree for me to go to the Military Technical High School in Sibiu, in a city 100 miles away. That was bad news for my mother, because I was the only help she had at hand for daily work. With tears in her eyes, she agreed to let me learn far away. I wanted to go, but I was sad. I knew I had to do something with my life, but for that, I had to leave my mother alone for a while. As painful as it was, I went on my way. Being at that school, in the following year, I remember that the bombing sirens could be heard at night. Being afraid of bombing the cities, all the children were often awakened from sleep and put to sit in the trenches made in the backyard. Being there, I was looking above. The nights were cold. The sky was starry. I was able to return home on vacation, and in the summer of 1944, I was happy to receive some very good news. My father returned from the front safely and unharmed. He was left to come home, and after another year, the war was over. Although these were wonderful news, poverty still existed. And for many families, including mine, the situation had become even more difficult in the years to come. Communism was installed here with tanks and brute force, and in the years that followed, many freedoms and rights were banned. People were afraid to debate political news, and in those rural areas, including us, were forced to hand over most of the animals and goods to the state to be a part of the collectivization plan. I focused on becoming an officer in the army, and I had a good career. I am a retired colonel now. But besides my career, I learned as much as I could, and I became passionate about history. Although most of the textbooks belonged to state propaganda, and the government at that time did not allow ideas against it, I managed to read about the past, from hidden old books and other materials sold in the black market. I'm proud of what I accomplished in my life, even if it was hard. Today's people must learn from the difficult past and the mistakes of history. This is the only way we can progress. Just thinking of the sacrifice of some, of how much they suffered, and the fact that many of us did not have electricity, food, or any true form of stability at that time. Just remembering and knowing this, just like that, we can appreciate and keep what we have today.